If you want a fast mid-size two-door BMW, you are faced with a dilemma. Do you get the M440i or pay an extra 30,000 euros for the M4? The two cars are very similar, although they provide different driving experiences and they actually address quite different buyers. For the majority of car buyers, the M440i is more than enough performance coupe. In a straight line, on paper at least, there isn't that much in it between an M440i and an M4. But when you drive both of them, you really do start to notice some quite significant differences between them. Both are very good in their own right, and you can have a lot of fun in them. But the M440i is a lot less intimidating. It offers most of its performance without scaring you, and you get 7/10 of the full M experience. The car that I'm driving today is an M440i, which thankfully I got to drive quite soon after driving an M4. And after driving that, the M440i seems a bit tame. Although you can, as I said, still have a lot of fun in this car. But is the M4 30,000 euros more car? The M440i here in Romania starts from around 73,000 euros. My tester costs about 95 because it's a very well-equipped BMW press test fleet model, finished in beautiful tanzanite blue, which is one of my favorite BMW blues. And even the color itself is a 2,000 euro option that just adds to the price. But you could get one of these cars without any of the optional extras and still have an absolute blast with it and enjoy the heck out of it, even without having to spend an extra 20-odd thousand euros on options. So this is the LCI model, which means BMW has made a few changes to it to give it a mid-life cycle refresh, or life cycle impulse, which is what LCI stands for. It gets a revised front fascia with new headlights, and I think BMW has managed to integrate the still big and not very pretty grille, but it has managed to integrate it better somehow. My tester has a blacked out grille, which helps it disappear a little bit. It's been 4 or 5 years since this car was launched, and it feels like yesterday, by the way. Time really flies. And this grille was super controversial, and at the time I thought I didn't like it, but then I grew to not mind it, and now I'm back to not liking it again. But on my tester, with the black trim, it looks pretty good, and you don't notice it as much. But it's not BMW's happiest design hour, let me tell you.
The redesigned grille signals a change in how BMW positions its hot sub-M models. They used to fall into the M performance category, but BMW has done away with that and now designates cars like the M440i as M models. It now refers to true M cars, such as the M4, as M high performance models. This is why you see an M logo on the grille in the M440i, which wasn't there on the pre-refresh model, and the bars are now horizontal, like on M cars, not vertical like before.
Overall, this is a good looking car. My only problem with it is that BMW decided to reinterpret the Hofmeister kink in the side windows to a point where you don't really notice that it's the Hofmeister kink, which is a BMW design staple. As part of the facelift, BMW now also offers the fancy looking laser rear lights, which look quite cool, although I have some mixed opinions about them because at night you don't really see the thin strips of light that are quite elegant and delicate and pretty. It's a very nice rear light design. The problem is you only see the lower part, which is a bigger area that lights up. It looks a bit like that's the entire rear light, even though it isn't. When you get up close and you see the car at night with its rear lights on, you do start to notice the strips. And speaking of lasers, BMW doesn't offer laser headlights anymore. All cars come as standard with LEDs, but the blue indicates that they are adaptive. This car has a set of 19-inch lightweight M Performance wheels, which are some of my favorite wheels from BMW's current lineup. I think they look great, and they are also lightweight, which is another bonus. And they have sporty Continental winter tires, which allow you to have a bit of fun with the rear of the car, but we'll get to that soon. I haven't seen this car's actual wheels. I don't know which design BMW Romania chose for this because I only saw it with these winter wheels, but I think they look really, really good. One thing I will say, the 19-inch wheels, especially in the front wheel wells, they look a bit smaller than the 19s on the M4, because the M4 has 19s on the front and 20s on the back. This has 19s all around, but they are staggered and they are wider in the rear. but on the non-M4 series, they look a bit lost in the arch. Maybe that has to do with the ride height, I don't know. Maybe if you lower this car, it will look as good as the M does. For the facelift, BMW also made some changes inside, so you will immediately notice this new design sport steering wheel with a flat bottom and a red center mark, and it feels fantastic in the hand. It is also heated in this car, which is very well equipped. This car already had the two curved screens in the middle, 12.3 inch in front of the driver and 14.9 inch for the central display. I also really like this patterned aluminium trim, or aluminium-like trim on the dashboard. It's so much better than piano black. This car, if it had the piano black, even with 6,500 kilometers on its odometer, I'm sure it would have been full of scratches. But this looks like new. And the piano black parts of the transmission selector have already picked up so many scratches. It's just a bad choice. I hope automakers get rid of it. Just driving this car sedately, it's really comfortable. I've configured the Sport Individual mode so that the transmission and the drivetrain are in Sport, not Sport Plus. And the suspension, which has adaptive dampers, is in Comfort. And I much prefer this over the regular Comfort mode, which mutes the engine considerably. So this car has active exhausts with a flap. So when you're not in Sport mode with iconic sounds enabled, the right exhaust is closed, and it doesn't really sound all that impressive. If you enable iconic sounds, a flap opens and the right exhaust becomes active, and the car also starts pumping a little bit of fakeness through the speakers. But BMW does this really, really well. I mean, it doesn't offend me. I don't feel like I'm being lied to. It's just the engine note that is enhanced. So it's not like in an EV where it plays something that has nothing to do with the car to give you a sense of speed and acceleration and to make it a bit more exciting. The B58 has a very specific and unique tone to it. It's really nice and it's really intoxicating. So just cruising in this car, it's really comfy, it's really relaxed, even with the settings the way I have them. So with the drivetrain and transmission in Sport, it still changes gear at a relatively low RPM, but you do feel the gear shift just a little bit, and I like it. I mean, this still needs to feel like a sporty car, even though it's clearly designed to work well as a GT, which it does. The seats are really comfortable. I think these are optional. I'm sure the Tartufo merino leather is optional. It even has BMW individual tags on the side to let you know that it is a special leather, and it feels it. It's about as good as Alpina's own leather, which I got to try when driving the B3 and B4 GT in Mallorca. I wrote an article on BMW Blog about that, and there's also a video there about that. That's what really struck me about those cars, just how much of a difference better leather makes in the interior. But this feels almost as good. It's really special. I would also say about the front seats that after driving an M4, you do feel like you're sitting a bit higher in this car. The driving position is still nice and low, as you would expect from a BMW, but it's not quite as low as in an actual M car. And I'm pretty sure that if you get the carbon bucket seats in the M4, you sit even lower than with the standard seats. But over speed bumps, so this is with the suspension in Comfort, the car is really, really nice. Sure, it's firm, but the damping feels sophisticated and there's no crashiness and no bounciness. It just works. It's a really, really sorted setup. So as a daily, this beats the M4 hands down. It's more comfortable, it's easier to drive, there's fewer modes to confuse you here. You can just put it in Sport and shoot off into the distance. While in the M4 you have to configure the M buttons, think about which mode you want, think about how severe you want the gear shift to be. And unless you're an enthusiast, you might not want the hassle of having to do that every time you want to go fast in your car. Just pressing a single button or a couple of buttons, or the same button twice, because if you press the Sport button here, you cycle through Sport, Sport Plus, and Sport Individual. So yeah, this is definitely a more user-friendly approach, but you do miss out on all of the control that the actual M gives you. BMW has updated the B58 engine for the 440i LCI. It made a number of small improvements, but there's no extra power or torque. But BMW says that it's a bit more efficient, and it rates the average efficiency at 9 liters per 100 kilometers. I've been averaging 16.5 for the last few days that I've been driving this car, which is fair because I've not been babying it around at all. This is a car you want to enjoy, which I have, and I am, because it's really a lot of fun. But it can be really efficient if you're not leaning on it. So on my way to this somewhat twisty road that's a bit outside of Bucharest, I set the cruise control to 90 kilometers per hour, and it was using under 7 liters per 100 kilometers. Yesterday, I took it on the highway where I set it to the speed limit of 130 kilometers per hour. I think I put in 135. And it was using 8.2, 8.3 liters on level ground, which is remarkable for a car that has 374 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque, and it can blow your socks off if you accelerate it. It's wicked fast, and with the unmistakable caramelly smoothness of the B58 straight 6, which has to be one of the most recognizable engines of this generation. I mean, by name at least. Do you know the engine code of any other current engine? But everybody knows about the B58, which turns any car into a beast. I remember driving the Toyota GR Supra on this very road, and that car has the same engine. And it's a small car with rear-wheel drive, the same brutish and very torquey character, but also it's an engine that wants to be revved. And that car was fantastic. I fell in love with it. And I would probably pick it over an actual M Coupe. So I'd probably pick it over an M2. I have reviews of both of those cars on the channel, the M2 and the Supra. If you want to check them out, they're there. And I also have a review of the M440i, which is this car's sedan equivalent, which I took to a nice mountain road and I drove it around, and I had many things to say about it. So compared to the M4, this feels like a bit of a step down, but it's also a better daily car. But compared to the M440i, the sedan, this feels a bit more special and a bit sportier. I'm pretty sure the suspension is a bit stiffer in this car, and maybe the torsional rigidity as well, because you do feel the bumps a bit more. Not that you mind it. This is a pretty big car. It weighs 1.8 tons, but it feels very controllable, manageable, and forgiving around the corners, which can't really be said of an M car, especially if you get one with just rear-wheel drive. And even with all-wheel drive, an M car is a lot more tail-happy than this. I would honestly put a bit of a noisier exhaust on this car, and I would prefer a manual transmission, but you can't get it with one anymore. And in Europe, you have to have xDrive on this car. In the US, I'm pretty sure you can still get it with rear-wheel drive only, which should make it even more fun and engaging, and sketchier on a twisty road if you don't have your wits about you. So this car can do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.5 seconds, which is about 7/10 slower than an actual M4, but you really don't notice it. Both these cars are really, really quick. So I'll put it in Sport Plus. Traction is off, left foot on the brake. Let's put the transmission into Sport as well. Launch control active, lift off the brake. That's 100. It's really, really quick. Not quite as quick as the M, but it's quick enough. And even though it has all-wheel drive, you can still play with the rear quite easily. Maybe a bit too easily. It feels like a rear-wheel drive car. This is so fun. This is a great car. The powertrain is truly fantastic. The B58 is an engine for the ages. So on the dilemma of whether to buy this or the M4, it really depends on how hardcore an enthusiast you are. I myself would get an M4. I would get a non-competition with a manual gearbox, even though the ZF HP transmission is fantastic, and it gets extra aggressive tuning in the M4, but it shifts gears really nicely in the 440i as well. But the question is the M4 30,000 euros more car? And I don't think it is, because with some clever mods you can replicate the M4 experience in an M440i for a lot less. And this is still really capable, and more than the casual driver would really be able to handle at the limit. It feels agile and nimble and willing, and thanks to the mild hybrid system, which I think adds 25 horsepower, throttle response feels really, really good. And the rear is really playful, as I said. You can have a lot of fun in this. It's certainly a lot less intimidating than an M4. So keep that in mind if you're cross-shopping between these two cars. That's pretty much it for me on the M440i. As is the case with a car like this, I'm going to keep driving it until I run out of fuel. If you've watched this far and reached the end of the video, I appreciate it. Maybe consider subscribing and liking this video, because a lot of work goes into these videos and I do all of the work myself. And I would like to have a bit of a bigger audience to do all of these shenanigans. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.